All right, everyone, welcome to the All Company Training this beautiful Friday. I know it's been a while since our last meeting, and I know you guys missed us. So today we're going to be taking an inside look at the customer's IPAWS training and Alertus certification program. This is more of a sales training than it is a technical training, as we just want to make sure that all account managers and sales folks, understand and are able to answer customers' questions in regards to IPAWS and the implementation, and give them information as to what they will be expecting throughout implementation, and then the training, and then their maintenance and follow-up thereafter. This is also to go over the regulatory requirements that they have per FEMA, and also to decipher what the customer's responsibility is with FEMA and what Alertus's responsibility is in terms of the IPAWS implementation. Okay, remember, feel free to ask any questions at any point in time. You can raise your hand, unmute yourself, or just enter your questions in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and answer them as they come in or at the end. All right, so again, this is not a technical training. Gary did offer 2 sessions on the IPAWS technical training. They were recorded, so if you would like a copy of that, you can go ahead and reach out to him and he'll be able to send it to you. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look. So as part of the implementation for IPAWS, customers are going to be asked to undergo this training because we want them to get familiarized with using their IPAWS feature on the Alertus system. And in order to make sure that there are no false or failed activations, make sure they have no issues with their with their certificates, we created this training to offer them to make sure that they are just prepared to manage their IPAWS feature on the Alertus system without any issues. Okay, so if they are undergoing the implementation of IPAWS, it is already assumed that they have become an authorized alerting authority with FEMA. In order for an organization to become that, they have to have gone through the FEMA process, which is one, they have to complete some IPAWS web-based training from FEMA, not ours, from FEMA. Then they have to select their IPAWS compatible software. And of course, hopefully we're trying to get them to go with us, Alertus. And then they have to execute an MOA with FEMA. And then FEMA will go ahead and grant them authority to go ahead and send out IPAWS alerts. FEMA will also only grant them certain jurisdictional boundaries. And they might not have access to all the channels for IPAWS alerting, but FEMA is the one that will authorize them for specific channels and specific regions. Okay, and so this is what their objectives are, is to make sure that they're proficient in the use of the Alertus system to send out IPAWS. We want to make sure that we minimize potential errors for any false or delayed alerts, and we want to make sure that they understand what their responsibility is for maintaining IPAWS on the Alertus system, as well as understand FEMA's requirements, because they do have follow-up to make sure that their certificates are up to date. This is their general agenda. Before getting started, we're going to go over all things IPAWS related for them to make sure that they understand. Then, and I'm not going to show this to you today because we went over this during the internal training for the winter release. And so that also was recorded and is up in the knowledge base if you guys want to take a look at that. It was really exciting. But essentially the customers will get to know a little bit about what they need to know for Alertus and IPAWS, then how to maintain their connections and create new ones if necessary. And then we'll go through the activation and show them where they can update and cancel the alerts and view their success and error codes and things like that. So in terms of what IPAWS is, if you guys are not familiar with that, FEMA basically has developed a modern national system for local alerting. IPAWS stands for Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. It provides public safety officials an effective way to alert and warn the public using either emergency alert system, which is EAS, wireless emergency alert system, which is WEA, WEA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA weather alerts, and public alerting systems from different unique systems. So for example, if they are a municipality in a tribal government, they may have other systems. And so FEMA allows IPAWS to integrate with that so that they can blast out their alerts as necessary to their public. Using IPAWS allows them to deliver alerts simultaneously through multiple communication pathways to reach as many people as possible. And they want to make sure that everyone is clear that IPAWS does not replace their existing alerting methods, but rather it complements them and offers additional capabilities. As I mentioned, IPAWS alerting is confined to certain jurisdictional boundaries for that specific alerting authority, which FEMA will let them know what those are. And in terms of what type of customers are able to become IPAWS alerting authorities, it's basically public municipalities, governments, and even public universities as well. So customers will need to know that they are responsible for maintaining their IPAWS feature on the alerts console. And so there are a couple of key concepts that they have to understand. The first one is that they are a collaborative operating group, or also known as a COG. So you'll hear that either alerting authority or COG. Essentially, that is what was assigned to them and they've been assigned to by FEMA. Once their organization is assigned to a COG, FEMA will email them 2 certificates. They are digital certificates that are housed in a key store. One will be the training certificate where they can practice, setting up their alerts. And then one is their live or production certificate that will actually allow them to send out live alerts to the public. As I mentioned, they're stored in a key store. And basically a key store is a way to securely store the certificates digitally, and it is password protected. And then both certificates will be housed in there. And again, the key store is issued by FEMA. So these are some regulations, some mandatory things that they have to keep up with FEMA in order to make sure that their certificates maintain up to date. So FEMA requires all alerting authorities to undergo a mandatory monthly proficiency demonstration. Okay, it is intended to increase their ability and their proficiency and reduce alerting errors. They're going to have to log into the IPAWS lab. Now, it used to be called IPAWS lab, and now it's called IPAWS Technical Support Services Facility, or TSSF. It's available 24/7, every single day of the year. So as long as they do it within that month, within a calendar month, it could be at any point in time of the day, but they have to go ahead and test their system and do that proficiency demonstration once a month. Now, if they miss some proficiency tests, then FEMA will go ahead and send them updates like, hey, you missed this month's test, make sure you take it. Now, if they miss 3 consecutive proficiency tests, then FEMA will cancel their live environment. And so they won't be able to send out live IPAWS alerts. So of course, during the FEMA training that they undergo, they will be made to know that, but during our training that we will provide them after the fact, this will serve as just a reminder for them, okay? And so if in the case, that the customer comes to you and says, hey, my IPAWS isn't working, why can't I send out live alerts? This is an emergency. You can ask them, have you performed your monthly proficiency test? No. How long has it been? If it's been more than 3 months, that means FEMA canceled it and they have to go to FEMA to make sure they get reinstated. And then as a courtesy, us here at the training team will be available to help facilitate their first monthly proficiency demonstration after implementation. if they choose to. It is optional. They're not forced to use us. If they're comfortable doing it, they can go ahead and do it themselves. But we'll be there to help, guide them or offer any information or show them, oh yeah, just click next and etc. Okay. In terms of implementation and configuration, so this is more of a CYA for us. And so we want to make sure that they understand that in order to have the IPAWS implementation, they have to have already gone through the FEMA process to become an authorized alerting authority. Once they do that, they're going to contact their account manager or sales representative or account owner, whoever is in charge of their account here at Alertus, to then purchase and enable the IPAWS feature, right? During implementation, what they need to provide to our Impl team is their live and training certificates. Remember, those are digitally stored in their key stores. We'll get that information, and that is what will allow them to enable it in their system. And then once they're implemented, they'll have access to the IPAWS activation, the dashboard where they can manage, update, and cancel and view the alerts that they sent out, and also the IPAWS configuration and settings page. In terms of the digital certificate, they are, as I mentioned, responsible for managing it after the initial implementation, which means that if it's expiring, they need to make sure that they do what they are supposed to do in order to update their certificate. And if it's expired, they have to reach out to FEMA to make sure that they get their renewal. So they have to stay up to date with that, and they'll be the ones that will be updating the dates. And if any changes in the certificates happen, they'll be the ones to update that. Okay. There are also some access rights that need to be enabled for the users that will be able to go ahead and send IPAWS alerts. So in the user rights and access, they have to make sure that they enable the send IPAWS alerts, the IPAWS dashboard, and the IPAWS settings for those individuals. Otherwise, they won't be able to send them. All right, so this we went over during the internal release training, the winter release training, but just FYI, the IPAWS connections is what the initial setup is for their 2 certificates. It will have them put in their name, the name of their, their alerting authority, their COG. They're able to turn on or off any safety or security features. For example, if they choose to have an activation pin for IPAWS, they will enable it there. If they want to have that secondary confirmation where they have to enter the word training or live or production in order to send the alerts, they'll be able to enable that here on this page as well. This is also the page where they'll be able to maintain their certificates and create their geofencing for the area that they are authorized to alert to. All right, so essentially during the training, we're going to go over every aspect of it so that they understand, what they're looking at when they log into the server and they're looking at the IPAWS settings. So we just want to make sure that they're familiarized with what they're supposed to see and what they will need to keep up with. And so here, these are the different channels that they may or may not have access to. And again, this depends on which channels FEMA has approved them for. So not every customer that is an alerting authority has access to all the channels. Some may only have access to WIA and non-weather emergency messaging. Some may have access to, EAS, WIA, and NWEM. Some may only have access to one or the other. So really, these are the different channels that are part of the IPAWS alerts. But again, customers, depending on what FEMA has authorized them for and for where they're authorized to launch them, they will have access to one or more of these. Event codes are essentially what type of events they're able to send IPAWS alerts for, these are also dependent on what FEMA has given them permission to send out. So even though there are a ton of event codes, they'll only be able to send out the ones for which they have been authorized for. And what Gary and the dev team have done a beautiful job of is making sure that if they're not authorized for something and it doesn't exist in their certificate, then it's either grayed out or it does not appear on their list. Okay. And then there's also categories as well, categories, event codes, and also the geolocations, the areas. Those are all, again, authorized by FEMA. So just because let's say there's an alerting authority in Maryland, doesn't mean they have jurisdiction to send out IPAWS alerts throughout all of Maryland. They might only be able to send it out in their specific county or even in their only specific city. Okay, and then if you remember from the training a couple weeks ago, we also created a watermark so that they can visually see, you know, when they're in the live environment and when they're in the training environment. We wanted to make sure that we provide our customers with as many visual cues and just security, just to make sure that they're not launching practice alerts in a live environment and, you know, scaring their public. So we wanted to make sure that that doesn't happen, and, you know, also to make sure that we're not held liable for them using it incorrectly. We made sure that we provided them all types of visual cues as well as training to make sure that they are operating in the correct environment at all times. So we also, once we go over all of the regulatory requirements, as well as, you know, setting up their connection, we then will take them through initiating an actual alert, and we'll send it out through their training environment, or I will demonstrate it in our training domain under the development environment, because anything sent out in a training environment actually goes to the FEMA IPAWS lab. And so in order to make sure they're not constantly having alerts go off, you know, while people are practicing, we go over it with them here as well. And then, you know, notice here they have some channels that they have access to. They'll be check marked. And then whatever they don't have access to, it will show up with that, you know, that universal nope, cannot enter here, because their certificate does not allow them to send to that particular channel. And then we also go over, you know, all of the information, what is required, what is not required, and what is optional for creating the content of the IPAWS alerts. And then if you remember, one of our newest features is the ability to record audio right from the browser. But as of right now, that's only for IPAWS, and it's only if they have access to the emergency alert system, the EAS channel. If they don't have permission to communicate through EAS, then they will not have this option here, just FYI. And then in terms of recording the audio, they can either do it right from the browser, and they'll be able to play it back and make sure it sounds correctly and upload it, or they can upload their own audio file. And then in terms of the alert locations, remember that we have the ability to save geoshapes now. And so what they're going to do is, in the beginning, before they establish everything and while they're creating their connection, they're already going to go ahead and create this geo fence, save it, and then they'll be able to save it in their connection, and it'll appear every time when they go to send out an IPAWS alert. And then, so these are the security features I was talking about. So, and again, these are optional, and the customers can choose to use them or not, but they can choose to have an activation pin specifically for IPAWS alerts. So the pin is can be different from the preset pins, right? Or it can be the same. It really is up to them. But they'll have a specific pin for IPAWS, and then this second security feature is to enter the word either training or live or production when they're right before they send it. So at the confirmation page, they'll have to do one more step. And again, they can enable both or just one or none. And then we'll take them through a demo. I will not do that for you today because you've already seen this a few times. But essentially we'll go through it to make sure that they understand how to launch it. And then we'll show them how to cancel and update the alerts, which is done from the IPAWS dashboard. The IPAWS dashboard honestly is beautifully designed in that they're able to see what channels they were able to target and if they were delivered, along with the information there of the alert that was sent. And right from the IPAWS dashboard, they'll be able to update the alert. When they update the alert, they'll be taken back to the activation page with all of the information they already entered. So that really minimizes that time of, it creates more efficient processes and it streamlines it for them because the information is already pre-populated. They just have to update the alerts as necessary, resend it. It will then update to say update, and then they can go ahead and cancel the alert once the event is cleared. So this is what it looks like with the initial alert. It'll say just alert. When it's an updated alert, it notifies them when it's been updated. And then when it's canceled, it shows them canceled. So again, kudos to Gary and the team because they did a great job on putting this IPAWS feature together. And so from the IPAWS dashboard, they'll also be able to, excuse me, they'll also be able to access what is called the IPAWS message viewer. And what that is from FEMA itself, it allows them to see what channels their alerts were disseminated to, what the information was, and if there were any error codes or success codes, they'll be able to see that. Now, in terms of the error and success codes, it's a separate page in that IPAWS message viewer. So in here, in that FEMA page, there's going to be another button there that says display alert status. And then they'll be able to see that response review. And this is where they'll see if there were any errors. And if not, it will say N and then oh my gosh, ACK means acknowledged. That means that alert was acknowledged and disseminated in that particular channel. In the event that they do see any error codes for channels that they have been authorized for, that is not something that we handle. That is something that they will need to reach out to FEMA for support on. And then finally, these are the key takeaways. So the customer's responsibility is to sign that MOU with IPAWS, with FEMA. They must undergo that monthly proficiency testing in order to maintain their certificates. They are also responsible for maintaining their certificates up to date. So if they're expiring or if they've expired, they're the ones that are supposed to update them in the system. They're responsible for user management, so making sure that the users that will need to, or the users that they authorize to send out IPAWS alerts will need to have those permissions turned on for IPAWS in order to access it. They're also responsible for their own activations. And again, they'll need to contact FEMA if they see any error codes come up on the IPAWS message viewer. Now, in terms of Alertus, what our responsibilities are is to make sure that the customer is able to access the IPAWS module in the console. We are responsible for the initial configuration of their live and training certificates. We are also responsible for their IPAWS system training, as well as the user guide that was beautifully put together by our technical writing team. And then any technical support for system-specific maintenance and troubleshooting of the IPAWS feature will be handled by tech support. However, again, if there's any error that occurs on the side of the IPAWS alert in terms of message dissemination, specifically here, that is FEMA's response, or that is their responsibility to contact FEMA for. And with that, that brings us to the end. And essentially that was what the IPAWS system, and Alertus system certification training is for the customers. Do you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns?
I have a question.
Oh, hello.
Hello, thank you for the training, Chris. So
Yeah.
I wasn't available at the first 10 minutes. Maybe you answered for this, but it is not possible to automate IPAWS alerts, right? Its activation can only be done manually for the compliance with the regulations. Am I understanding this correctly?
Correct. You mean like automated, like with a
custom event triggers?
Panic button? Yeah, no, it has to be done through the IPAWS activation page manually.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Great question. Anyone else? And guys, we have Gil on the line, and he is our IPAWS expert as well. So if you guys have any specific regulatory questions, he's here. And if not, and we also have Gary on the line, Gary. So if you guys have any technical questions, he's here too. Please feel free to unmute yourselves. Otherwise, you guys are free to go.
Chris, I can add a little additional information here.
Oh,
in the process, so if you do run into a customer that meets the criteria, right? So they're a public entity, whether they're like a municipality from local, state, or federal, that's including the military, or they're tribal. And then if certain public universities, right? So if they're a public entity and they're not already in a learning authority, but they're interested in the IPAWS feature and becoming certified as an learning authority, please feel free to reach out to me. It's something that the professional services department can provide as a service, is help the customer navigate the application process to become a learning authority. It takes from anywhere from 1 month to 2 months to go through the process that Chris had outlined. It's primarily a 4-step process, but there is work that the customer has to do. They have to take the training. It's a 4-hour training. They have to provide FEMA the certificate, that MOU. So they actually send the MOU that needs to get approved by the state that they reside in. So that could be like another stumbling block. If the state does not approve that public entity, and this is mainly for the university side, the state has their state has a say whether they can be authorized to alert or not. So I can help navigate the customer through this. It is a paid service, so we are charging for the time. Again, it's a month to 2 months, and that includes the meetings with the customer, helping them through the documentation, telling them what they need to submit to FEMA. So that's something that we can provide. If they're already in a learning authority, let's say they're using another vendor, Rave Alert, Everbridge, and they want to come over to us, much easier process. I don't need to be involved in that. They can just go, sales reps or account managers can just quote the module, they pay for it, they go through IMPL, they go through training, and then they're ready to go. So if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Best way is just send me over a chat, and then we can talk about it. If I need to jump on a call with the customer, I can do that as well. So that's a resource that I provide to you.
awesome. Thank you, Gil. Your expertise is super valuable here, and we thank you. All right.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks. Anyone else? You guys just like listening to my voice, huh? Well, with that, I will bid you adieu. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday, guys. It is the weekend is almost among us, and I'll see you next time.